Hello, good morning. Looks like it's just a few of us for now, but let's get started. We will go through the lecture 10 study guide, which shouldn't take too long, probably like, maybe half an hour or so. And then we'll take up a few questions from the review that I posted yesterday. So first question here, match the correct terms with their names, with their meanings, and place the correct letters in the empty column. Let's take a look at the first definition here. Closer to the top of a limb. So whenever we describe the position of something relative to a limb, if it's closer to the joint, then we say it is proximal. Okay. If it's further away, then we say it is distal. So in this case, closer to the top of a limb. A limb is like the arm or the leg. And in this case, if it's closer to the top, then we will use the word proximal. Okay, so proximal is A. Okay, cross this out. On the opposite side of the body. Okay, if it's on the opposite side, we call it contralateral. Contralateral. Okay, so an example of contralateral is that your right arm is contralateral to your left leg. Okay, and left and right is opposite because we're looking at it from the front, right? So contralateral is on opposite side. It's more important when we talk about like nervous system in the next semester, that your right half, left half of the brain controls the right half of the body, right? So it's a contralateral relationship. Towards the head or above, we call that superior. Okay, superior. Back or at the back of, that would be posterior. Closer towards the bottom or end of a limb. So that would be the opposite of the first one. And it is going to be distal, which is right here. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the terms that are kind of like opposite pairs. So proximal is opposite to distal. Okay, we're probably going to run out of color very quickly, but we'll see where it goes. Okay, next one. Towards the feet or below. So that would be inferior. Okay, inferior, which is right here. Okay, and you're saying, let's take a look at this thing again. Let's say we have the person here. So this is like the ankle, and then this is the knee. So you might be wondering, should I say the ankle is inferior to the knee, because it's below, right? Or should I say the ankle is distal to the knee? Technically, both are correct, right? But it's probably more appropriate to say the ankle is distal to the knee because we're talking about a limb, right? So generally speaking, we use proximal and distal, referring to structures that are either on the leg or on the arm. Okay, so inferior is opposite to superior. Next one, front or in front of, that would be anterior, which is right here. Okay, and so anterior and posterior, they are an opposite pair. Towards the side of the body or away from the midline. The midline is this imaginary line that goes down the middle of the body. Midline. So if it's away from the midline, we call it lateral. If it's towards the midline, we say medial. So here it says towards the side of the body or away from the midline. The answer for that is lateral. So your ears are lateral to your nose. on the same side of the body. Right? So that's ipsilateral, ipsilateral, right here. So what color have we not used yet? Okay. Ipsilateral is opposite to contralateral. Okay. Again, if you have a question, please let me know. Towards the midline of the body. Okay, so that's medial. So your belly button is medial to your, I don't know, kidneys, I guess. Okay. So those would be opposite, okay, lateral and medial. Finally, last two, closer to the surface of the body, that is superficial, and closer to the core of the body, that is deep. Deep. All right. So your skull is going to be superficial to your brain because it's outside, right? So there you have it. Those are the anatomical terms. We'll be using this like a lot next semester. Okay. If I see you again in the second semester, you will hear me using these terms throughout the entire course. Any questions before we move on? Wonderful. Let's fill these in. Complete the following statement using the most appropriate anatomical terms. The cranial cavity is something to the thoracic cavity. And in case you need a refresher on what the cavities are, okay, this is just a very, very quick sketch. Okay, so up here, we have the cranial cavity. That's where your brain is going to be. Okay, here is your thoracic cavity. What do we find in the thoracic cavity? Give me like 2 organs that you can think of that would be in the thoracic cavity. Anybody? Yeah, lungs, right? Okay, someone private message me. Good. Lungs would be in the thoracic cavity. One more thing that's in the thoracic cavity. Anybody? What would be between the lungs? Yep, the heart, exactly. So the heart would be medial to your lungs, okay? And then down here, you would have your abdominal cavity. Okay, so the cranial cavity is superior on top of the thoracic cavity. The brain is deep to the skull. So within it, right? It's closer to the core of the body. The ears are lateral to the eyes because it's further away from the midline. The buttocks, which is the bump, your butt basically, okay, are something to the pelvis. So pelvis is like around this area, and then the butt is here, right? So it is posterior. The legs are inferior to the trunk. The trunk is like this area, the trunk of the body. The heart is medial to the lungs in between. The elbow is proximal to the wrist. And you think about the hand, okay, that's the wrist, that's the elbow, right? Okay, so the elbow is closer to the joint, proximal. The calf is something to the shin, okay? This is the leg, and the calf is right here at the back. Okay? And here is the shin. If you play soccer, that's where you wear your shin pad. Okay, so the calf is posterior. The ankle is distal to the knees. That's it. Complete the following chart for the different types of epithelium. Okay, so epithelium are these type of tissue that usually covers the surface of an organ or the inside of a hollow structure. Okay, like the blood vessels, for example, like a duct, for example. Yeah. So here, this one is going to be simple. Simple means one layer. Squamous. Squamous means pretty flat. Okay, so like on the test, I will give you pictures of these cells and you will have to be able to identify them. The location of in the body where you will find simple squamous would be places like the air sacs in the lung. Okay, we call that the alveoli, as well as blood vessels. Okay, because they are very flat and you have a single layer of it, they are perfect for things like diffusion. Right, so in the lungs, in the air sacs, you want to have gas exchange. You want the oxygen from the air to go into the blood, and then you want the carbon dioxide to leave the blood vessels and go into your lungs. Okay, so you want to have just a single layer where the gas can easily cross. So that's gas exchange. And in terms of blood vessels, you will find it on the inside of the blood vessels, and they help create a smooth surface. You want to have a smooth surface whenever the blood is, passing by, because otherwise the blood will clot. Okay? Blood do not like rough patches; they will clot. Okay, next one, we have a single layer, so it's still simple. And these are little square, okay? Like they are actually 3D, right? They're more like, cubes. And so we call them cuboidal. Cuboidal, simple cuboidal. You will find simple cuboidal in ducts of glands. Okay, so there are like two types of glands, right? Two types of glands. We have what's called like exocrine gland, okay, which secretes through a duct. Okay, so like sweat gland, right? The sweat comes out through a duct. Okay, and then we have something called endocrine gland, okay, which secretes directly into the blood. So that would be like, your adrenal gland secreting adrenaline. Okay, so here we talk about the duct of glands. We're talking about the exocrine gland. Okay, the ones that actually have ducts. What are they good for? Well, they are actually good for secretion and sometimes even absorption. Okay, like in the kidneys, you're going to have some of these simple cuboidal. It's going to help you absorb things. Okay, next one, we have the columns here. Okay, and they have little hair. The hair, as you know, they are called cilia. So this is ciliated columna. And you'll find them in airways, reproductive tracts, for example, in female, in the fallopian tube. These will help guide the egg. So remove mucus in the lungs. Reproductive tracts, I said, like it will guide egg movement. Okay, so unlike the sperm, which has a tail, the eggs, they don't. So they don't really know which way to go. The cilia will help guide them towards the uterus. Okay. And over here, we have the stratify. Stratify means multiple layers, right? Okay, multiple layers of flat cells. So stratify squamous. You will find them in surfaces that experience a lot of wear and tear. Okay, for example, the oral cavity, your mouth. You put a lot of things in your mouth. Some are hot, some are cold, some are acidic, some are basic. Right? All these things are going to subject the lining of the mouth to abrasion and stress. So you want to have these stratified squamous. Okay, they're pretty good at withstanding all these extremes. Okay, and the esophagus is another example. Esophagus is the tube that goes from your mouth to your stomach. Okay, and so same thing when you swallow the food, all these different temperature, different pH, that could put a stress on the tissue. But with multiple layers, they are built to withstand. Okay, so protection from abrasion. And sometimes they're even good for things like dehydration. Okay, if you have many layers, it's not easy for moisture to escape through them. Right? So in parts of the body where you want to keep the moisture, like your skin, for example, right? You would have to stratify squamous. Are we together? Anybody have any questions? No questions. Moving on. Complete the following chart for the different types of connective tissues. Again, on the final test, there might be some diagrams that you have to identify, so make sure you know what you're looking at. So this first one is pretty easy to identify, right? It looks like soap bubbles, and this is the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue. Another name for adipose is fat. Okay, what do? Well, they store energy in the form of lipids. Okay, and they're good at insulation, so insulating, as well as cushioning organs. Usually you find a little bit of fat, adipose tissue around key organs like the heart and like your liver, and they keep them warm. When it's minus 30 outside, your core temperature maintains at 37, partly due to the fat. Okay, they're like little bubble wraps around the major organ to cushion them. If you fall down, you know, that shock is not going to damage your heart, right? Because of the in part because of the adipose tissue. Next, we have the cartilage. These little grainy things that looks like rice crystal. They are cartilage. Okay. So generally, cartilage helps maintain structure, shape, right? And support, provide support. While maintaining, while providing, I guess, while, sure, we'll use providing again, providing flexibility. Okay, so there are no blood vessels in the cartilage, no blood vessels. That means it's difficult to heal. Okay, if damage, it takes a long time to heal without the blood vessels. So there are three different types, okay, of cartilage. There is the elastic cartilage, which is probably the easiest one to remember. So you will find them in places like nose and ear, and you bend your ear, it's going to go back to its original shape. That's because of the elastic cartilage. Your nose is also made of elastic cartilage. Part of it, anyways, the tip. Like once you go deeper in, it is actual bones that makes up your nose. Okay. Number two, we have the fibrous cartilage. Okay, so as the name suggests, these are tougher. Okay, so you will find them between vertebra. Vertebra, it's like your backbone. Okay, so like your backbone has all these. You learn them next semester, but there are like they're stacked, right? Little bones that are stacked on top of each other. Okay, each one of them is called vertebra, and the whole thing makes up your vertebral column. And in between your vertebra, you will find a cartilage disc. Okay, so this is the fibrous cartilage. Okay, it's called the intervertebral discs. You might have heard people say there's like a slip disc, right? Okay, when you get older, the disc might like pop out or something, and that will compress the nerve between them, you know, you might have numbness in the hand and the feet sometimes. There's a question: is there a difference between vertebra and vertebrae? Yeah, vertebra is singular. Vertebrae with an E, it's plural. So one vertebra, many vertebrae. Okay. So you will see, like in anatomy, a lot of times, instead of adding an S, like if something ends with A, the plural form is usually like AE. Okay. It's like, you know, nucleus and nuclei, right? Just English, I guess. Oh, and number three. Excuse me. Number three is the haline cartilage. Which is, you know, at the end of rib cage. So like there's a sternum, that's like your breastbone. Okay, and then these are your ribs. You have ribs. Okay, 12 pair of ribs, and the ribs would connect to your sternum through these cartilage. Okay, same thing on the other side. Okay, so these cartilage, they are an example of the haline cartilage. Okay, if you eat ribs, at the end there's that like cartilage part, right? That's what we're talking about, the haline cartilage. All right. Next, this is also easy to recognize. We got the blood here. Blood. Oops. Blood is a type of connective tissue. And characteristics and functions. You know, blood cells. They float. Floating in plasma. Okay, so again, we'll learn more about this next semester. Blood cell is about 45% of the total blood volume, and the plasma is about 55%. And you can separate them if you spin the blood. Okay, if you take a tube of blood and you spin it down, the cell will sink to the bottom, and the plasma, which is kind of yellowish actually, will float to the top. Okay. So we have our red blood cells, which is important for transporting oxygen. Of course, all these are in your PowerPoints, right? I'm just like summarizing it for you. And then the white blood cells, what are the white blood cells for? They are important for immune defense. Okay. Our white cells are more important now than ever during the pandemic. And then we have the platelets, which helps you form blood clots. If you have a cut and you need to stop the bleeding, That would be the function of platelets. All right. And the next one. Here, they are very, very packed together. So we call them dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue. All right. So we have two types. The first one is dense regular. Okay. And you would find them in things like tendon and ligaments. Okay, so they are very organized. The fibers are arranged parallel to each other. The other one is what we call dense irregular. Okay, which an example would be like under the skin. Okay, so in this case, the fibers are arranged randomly. I know there's like a lot of like information here, but actually you would not have a lot of questions for this section for this lecture on the final test. I think I'm just double checking here. Give me a second. I think there is just going to be like 8 or 9 questions. Okay, so not a lot. All right. So maybe don't stress too much. And I think the questions are pretty straightforward for this part. Okay, next part. This one is opposite to dense connective. It's kind of not very packed together. You can see the cells are the fibroblasts, right? We call them this very packed together. These are just kind of all over the place. So we call them loose connective tissue. Okay, so they are more for like fillers. Okay, so found between organs. Okay, and they're kind of like those not like bubble wraps, but then like those foam stuff. Sometimes you order electronics and then they arrive, and then you would have all these like S-shaped styrofoam stuff that kind of fill the box. I'm not sure if you know what I mean. They kind of look like popcorn actually, and then they fill up all the spaces, right? So that's what the loose connective tissue is for, and they're good for absorbing shock, and it helps bind tissue together. Okay. Last one, the thing that looks like a tree ring, they actually do look like that. They're bones. Okay, so they're good for providing support, for example, allow movements to occur, working with the muscle, storage of minerals, right, such as calcium, right? And actually phosphate as well. Okay. And the inside of the bones, they have bone marrows that helps you form blood cells. Okay. Next part. These are 3 types of muscle. Over here, the one that is kind of like crisscrossing, that is characteristics of cardiac muscle. You will only find cardiac muscle in the heart. So their function is beating of the heart. Is it voluntary or involuntary? Well, we cannot control our heart rate. We cannot control our heart. Like you cannot think and tell your heart to stop. And you wouldn't want to do that, of course. So that is involuntary. And you can see all these bands, right? The bands is striation, we call them. So this is striated. Striated. Next one, it's not crisscrossing. Parallel, clear striation, right? These are skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, just needed to sneeze. The function of skeletal muscle is movement. Anything in the body that you can move at will is skeletal muscle. So this is voluntary. Okay, so think about your bicep, your tricep, your legs, your tongue, muscle that moves your eyeball. All these things are skeletal muscles. Okay, voluntary, and they are striated. Okay, next part we have the smooth muscle. Okay, so they are, you don't see the bands, right? Yeah, they appear to have a smooth appearance. That's why we call them smooth muscle. And they move all the things that are inside your body. Okay, for example, movement of GI tract. Okay, like the food, right? How does the food move in your intestine? That's the function of the smooth muscle. That is involuntary, and it is non-striated. Okay, they do not have bands. Okay. Next part. Have I filled this in the recordings? Can you have any of you watch it? I mean, there are like a few of us here only. Have any of you watched the recordings? Did I do this diagram in the recordings? I don't remember. No, nobody knows. Okay, I guess I'll do it now then. I'll do it now. Okay, so this here, this position is called the anatomical position. Anatomical position. Okay. When you stand like this, facing forward with your palms a little bit apart, that's called the anatomical position. So if things that are higher up in the body, we call that superior. Superior. Lower is inferior. Here we see a limb, an arm. Right, so closer to the joint is the proximal. And further away is distal. Same thing for the leg, right? Okay. Distal. I guess it's over here. Right? So this is distal, and this is proximal. This here, this is the midline. Right? It goes all the way through the middle of the body. So if it's further away from the midline, it is lateral. And opposite to that is medial. Okay, so the nose is in the midline. Nothing is more medial than the nose. The mouth, right? The belly button, all those things are on the midline. They are very medial. Okay, so if you look at the person from the side, this is superior, this is inferior. Okay. At the front, it is anterior. And then at the back, it is posterior. There's another word for anterior, which is ventral. Okay. So the tummy side is ventral, and then the back side is dorsal. Yeah. So like if you think about like a dog or something, right? Like a dog. I don't know what it does. I don't know if the dog looks like that. Whatever dog here. So that would be anterior. That would be posterior. But then the ventral side would be here. And this is the dorsal. Okay? Because they walk on four legs, right? Okay, so the anterior and ventral is the same for us because we are bipedal. We walk on two legs. But if you think about animals that walk on four, then dorsal is not necessarily the posterior. Any question about these anatomical terms? Okay. Here we have planes that divides the body. So if we cut the body into front and back, right, like this one, A, we call this the frontal plane or coronal plane. Okay, so divides into top and bottom, right? Superior and inferior. We are gonna have another one here. That we will cut left and right. Okay. One thing you want to do for next semester is you want to get a lot of crayons, colors. We're going to be coloring like a lot of stuff. So this is sagittal. Sagittal. Sagittal plane. Okay. Divides into left and right. Okay. And then we have this one. Which is the transverse plane. Transverse plane, it divides into top and bottom. So I actually made a mistake here with the frontal. Front and back should be front and back for the frontal. Okay, transverse is the one that cuts into top and bottom. All right. Okay, last part here. Cardiovascular system. Okay, so these are just like the major system that we will learn next semester. We will spend like a week on each of the systems. So cardiovascular system, here are some like just main organs to kind of show you where they are. Okay, so there's the heart. Heart is right here. Okay, and the function of the heart is basically to pump blood throughout the body. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. We'll learn all the glory details next semester. Blood vessels, right? These are all these things basically, right? Throughout the entire body. Right? So there are like different types of blood vessels, arteries and veins, but they pretty much do the same thing. Their job is to transport blood. Okay. So that's actually the first lecture next semester. Okay, nasal cavity, that's right here. And the function of nasal cavity is just to filter the air, filter and moisten the air that we breathe. We got the lungs right here. Lungs are for gas exchange. Right here. And the trachea is right here, your windpipe, right? That's to take air to the lungs. Okay. All right. Nervous system. Nervous system, we have, of course, the brain. Brain is up here. Brain. So what does the brain do? Well, a lot of stuff. But if I have to summarize it in like a short sentence, right? So what they do is they will process sensory information. So things that you feel with your senses. So your sight, your hearing, right? Smell, process all the sensory information. And they will produce motor output. So like if you need to move certain parts of the body or something, right? All that stuff comes from the brain. The spinal cord is right here. All the way down, just down the center. It's actually in the middle of your vertebral column, your backbone. So the spinal cord is basically information highway. Between the brain and the body. And then branching off from your spinal cord is going to be all these nerves. Okay. So the nerve is there to, it's kind of serving as like an extension of the spinal cord, okay, to send and receive information. Again, this is just really brief, right? To just kind of give you a taste of what to expect. Okay? Like I said, we'll spend a week on each of these systems, 2 weeks on the nervous system, actually. Okay, next, kidneys. Okay, so there are kidneys. You have 2 kidneys. Kidney is important for filtering blood. Okay. You have about 1.2 liters of blood going through the kidneys every minute. And then you will filter them, which in turns produce urine. Okay. So this is ureters. The ureters carry the urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder. Carries urine from kidneys to bladder. Bladder is right here. Okay. So what does the bladder do? I'm sure you know. It holds the urine until they come out. All right. Next one. Digestive system. The stomach is right here. This is the stomach. And this would be a diaphragm, right? Separating your thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. The function of the stomach is, of course, like digest food. Okay. Digest food. Intestine, right? All this stuff here. There's a small intestine. There's a large intestine. Okay, so what does it do? Intestine, more digestion. Okay, plus absorption of nutrients. There's the esophagus right here. It's actually behind the trachea, the windpipe that we talked about. And the esophagus, of course, it carries food to the stomach. Carries food to the stomach. Oral cavity. This is your mouth. What's the mouth for? Ingestion. It's for you to put food in the mouth. Okay, reproductive system. There's only the female here, but that's okay. So ovaries right here. That's where eggs are formed. And actually stored. So, and then the eggs will be released each month after puberty. Uterus is right here. What's the uterus for? That's where the baby grows. Where the baby grows, the fetus. Okay. So there you have it. That's the entire course. Congratulations, you're finally done. So like I said, the test is next Tuesday. You will have access to it from 6 a.m. to 10, to 11:59 p.m. Make sure you get yours done within that window. Now, have you guys have a chance to look at the review that I post yet? Do you have any questions from the review, the test review, that you would like me to take up? No? Okay. I think it's more beneficial that you go through that review yourself rather than I tell you all the answers and then you just copy it down. It's probably better for you to look them up and you know, in the process of looking up the answer, it will help you you know, remember some of the material. So if you looked at it, fantastic. If you haven't done so, you can do that. And you know, if there are questions that you cannot answer, you can feel free to email me. So with that, that's it. That's it for the tutorial, I suppose. Thanks so much for coming, and I hope you have a restful holiday. And maybe I'll see you next semester. Okay.
Sorry, Professor Vince.
Yeah.
I was wondering, there was a question on the quiz that I had a problem with. I was wondering if you could review it,
Yeah, sure.
the
Do you have the
hereditary one.
question? Do you have the question?
Yeah, it was the one about the golden retrievers.
You
Um,
know, there are like thousands of questions in the bank, so I don't particularly remember it.
uh,
Um,
it was a question about a dog and how there were four colors,
okay.
but two black